Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about unit testing and how to fix a lack of unit tests. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, our code base is suffering from a lack of unit tests. We have a lot of a complexity in our code which is not tested both in the backend and in frontend, and things are getting worse all the time. How should we deal with this? And the short answer is that you need to decide at what level you want to put your testing, and then you need to deal with the fundamental issue, which is a lack of interest. Let me explain. So, what I will argue to you is that when it comes to testing and practices around test-driven development or any type of unit testing strategy that you want to adopt, usually when there's a lack of test, it indicates a fundamental flaw within your work process. And the fundamental flaw of the work process is the thing that the people who are really enthusiastic about test-driven development never seem to understand. And that is that people don't care because it's inconvenient to write tests. And no matter how much you promote, no matter how much you do workshops and all of this other stuff, you will never ever get people who are not interested or feel like it's a cumbersome thing to write tests to just do it naturally. Because humans can't be trusted. I like to say that any solution, regardless of what it is, needs one of two things as long as a human is involved for it to succeed long term. It either needs an incentive system, something that gives you an incentive to continue the process, or it needs to give you a physical restriction of some sort. Without any of these two, any process that is involving a human is going to fail at some point. It's impossible to make it work otherwise. And this might seem like I don't know, a, a pessimistic worldview, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as looking as a very realistic way of looking at people. And it doesn't mean that people are bad, it's just that we are fundamentally always looking for a way for us to be as happy as possible. And if we're dealing with something, a process, even if it's beneficial for us, but we don't really make it, doesn't feel enjoyable to us, or we can't really see the value in it, then there's no incentive. And I'm very sorry to say that for a lot of people this is the case with testing. Most people understand at a logical level that, well, tests are useful, but they don't want to go through the hassle of writing them because it doesn't make them feel good. It doesn't make them feel, they don't see that value, and it's almost impossible to convince people to see that value. So that leaves you, in my opinion, with the other option. And that is to start by introducing a physical restriction. The physical restriction that I suggest that you add is a coverage checker. Now, the problem with a coverage checker is that it's not going to help you get up the quality of the tests, but it's going to help you at the very least solve the problem of not having any tests. Let me explain. So when you have a coverage checker, the ideal scenario is for you to just make a measurement of your testing coverage at the first, on day one, right? And then add a validation step to your CI pipeline or whatever build strategy that you're using, so that if the coverage of newly committed code drops the total, it should break the pipe. It should break the build. You should not be allowed to do that. This doesn't stop you from circumventing it. It's a very common problem I've seen as well, where people say that they want to do this sort of thing, or they want to solve bloated code bases and things like that, and all that really happens once you add the threshold and you fail the build is that they get annoyed with it, even though they suggested to do this, and then they will just change the number. So you need to all agree on that coverage and unit testing is something that is important to you, and then you will have to try to stick by your guns. This you can of course make exceptions. I mean, it's not like if you need to deliver in 5 minutes and you're not able to write the test in that time, well, then you're going to have to lower the threshold. But ideally, you should keep on increasing the threshold. By having that check, you force people to have, as part of their process, a mental check at the very least. You've all agreed, first and foremost, which is the most important part, that you want to have better test coverage. People just have to get into the habit, and that's what the coverage tracker is there to do. It's not a way for you to enforce something. It's a way for you to remind people that you forgot to write your tests, and this has now lowered the coverage. That's all it is there to do, and the rest is up to your office culture to actually fix. You need to be a little bit flexible here. You need to have people get into the motions first and foremost with the threshold with the coverage, and then you need to, well, basically you need to address people's issues as they come up, because quality testing is a much bigger problem than just having a coverage tracker. But at least with the coverage tracker, you're going to get the ball moving. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you want to solve the problem of having a lack of unit test coverage in your company, the first thing that you need to do is to agree with all your coworkers what level of testing you actually want. Now, if you're just looking to add some unit testing and you feel that you need to get a better handle on all of your code, I highly suggest that you just all agree that we want to create automated tests. You don't have to force people into like a test-driven development workflow. Don't go that far. Just let people work the way that they want. You can use office culture and workshops and influencing and influence to make people write better quality types of tests, but the bare minimum is to agree that we want tests. If you can get to that point, the next step would be add a coverage tracker. And if the coverage drops because somebody's committing untested code, let them deal with it the way they want. If they want to write tests in a test-driven fashion, or if they want to write it in some other fashion, that doesn't really matter. The important thing is that you have tests so that the coverage goes up, and then you keep on adding more and more tests, and you bump the threshold higher and higher so that the coverage goes up. That, as I've said, is not a solution to the problem of quality tests, but it is a way for you to get the ball moving and get people into the habit of writing tests, and that is the first step towards writing really good tests. Have a great day.